Making trades is one of the funnest things you can do in fantasy football, and yes, I just said the word funnest. It's a real word. I googled it. But here is the problem with trading in fantasy football. The majority of people have no idea how, when, or who to trade for who. Those trade calculators that are out there, they're absolute nonsense. Don't trust those. I promise you that using common sense is way more successful when making fantasy football trades. I see too many people that finally get a good player and they immediately want to trade him off to sell high. Why? Just use the good players sometimes. Then I also see people who have underperforming studs and they just want to trade them away. Why rush? You're not going to get anything for them right now. That's like the equivalent to buying a new car, paying sticker price, and then returning it a month later and having to pay out of pocket however much it depreciated. You don't do that in the real world. You do not do that in fantasy football either. Now, of course, there are exceptions, right? Dumb league mates are an exception. If they want to come in and buy low on a player and you can actually get something good in return, sweet. Let it be their problem now. So this is what we're going to do here today. I asked the members of our Discord to give me a list of players that they don't really know if they should be buying or selling. Now, if you aren't in our Discord right now, boy, are you missing out. All you need to do though is hit the join button just below the video, become a channel member, and get inside of our Discord so you can have a bigger role inside this community. It is a toxic-free fantasy football space just filled with people who love the game. So anyway, based off of that member feedback, I have a list of 18 players that I'm going to be breaking down in this show and letting you know whether you should be actively buying or selling them in your fantasy football leagues. Now, you may want to pay attention to the first player up. He was the consensus overall #1 pick in 2025. It's Ja'Marr Chase. Now, Ja'Marr Chase is the current wide receiver 21, and he has scored less than 7 fantasy points now in 3 of the 4 games this year. Joe Burrow isn't coming back anytime soon, and the Bengals' schedule isn't getting much easier. He's going to have to deal with guys like Jalen Ramsey and Sauce Gardner in the upcoming weeks before their bye week. But here is the biggest issue. If you try to trade him right now, you're not going to get anything for him. If someone in your league, though, wants to buy low, then for sure, let's see what we can get. Otherwise, cross your fingers that he can put together a big game or 2, and then we can try to sell him then. I'm still hoping that Cincinnati goes out and tries to get a quarterback like Jameis Winston. So if you can sell, great. Otherwise, we may have to hold and just hope for a quarterback trade. Now, next up is Alvin Kamara, and on the surface, it seems like this season has been an absolute disaster, and he for sure has underperformed. He's the current RB26, but he's only 8 points away from being the RB16, which is where he was drafted. He's still had 19 plus touches in 3 of the 4 games this year, and even though Spencer Rattler won't check down to him very often, who's to say that Spencer Rattler starts the entire season? Don't forget, the Saints drafted quarterback Tyler Shuck in the 2nd round of the NFL draft. And with the Saints staying winless, there's a chance he gets a shot to start, to see what he's got this year. That could end up being a huge boost to Alvin Kamara as the season progresses. He started off a little bit slow, but if the owner is frustrated, I'm going to buy low on Alvin Kamara. Up next is Derrick Henry, and people are freaking out over the king, and right now, it kind of sucks. He's the running back 19 through 4 weeks of the season. Now we have a Lamar Jackson injury, and there's a chance that he doesn't even come back and play until week 8 now. But there is more to this story that we need to look at. Over the last 3 weeks, where he has really struggled, he's played 3 of the best run defenses in the NFL. Kansas City, they limited guys like Saquon Barkley and Omarion Hampton. Detroit, they limited Josh Jacobs, and Cleveland has shut down basically Detroit, Green Bay, and Cincinnati's run game as well this season. But if you look ahead in the schedule, there are only really 2 tough games coming up. The Rams in week 6, the Browns in week 11. Now, Baltimore has to keep trying to win. They gotta make up some ground in this division, and Cooper Rush can't do it alone. They will lean on King Henry, and with better matchups coming, I will buy low on Derrick Henry if I can. Now, after the king, we got Chase Brown of the Cincinnati Bengals, and Cincinnati overall is just a total nightmare. With Jake Browning at quarterback, the running game is just as affected as the passing game. Defenses aren't scared of Jake Browning beating them down the field, so they're stopping the run, forcing a lot of pressure on the quarterback, and it's just killing Chase Brown. He's averaging only 2.3 yards per carry on the season, and with the way that the offensive line is playing, I don't know if that changes much rest of season. You'd think we'd be getting a lot more pass catching work, but he only had 3 targets last week in a game in which they trailed the entire time. Now, you're not going to be able to sell him for very much. Really similar to Jamar Chase. Now, if someone in your league wants to buy low, then sure, let's see what we can get. Otherwise, we may have to wait for a big game, but honestly, Chase Brown is a solid sell for me here through the rest of 2025. Now, after Chase Brown, we got Nico Collins of the Houston Texans, and he was drafted as the wide receiver 6, currently the wide receiver 20. So what is the issue? And honestly, it's not very much. He's getting similar targets per game. The touchdown rate is similar. His yards per reception are up in the 14s, and that's similar to his career averages. The problem is a lot of volume that he is getting is not catchable. It's great that he has 31 targets, but only 20 of them have been deemed catchable. That's a 64.5% catchable target rate, which ranks him as the wide receiver 65. So in reality, this has more to do with CJ Stroud. Now, the good news is that over the last 3 weeks of the season, the completion percentage of CJ Stroud has continued to creep up in each game. We aren't seeing a ton of targets going elsewhere in this offense, so you have to think that Nico is just one big game away from being back up inside the top 12 wide receivers on the season. If you can buy low on Nico Collins, I'm doing that here in 2025. But now let's talk about Ladd McConkey of the Los Angeles Chargers. He was drafted as the wide receiver 11, but is now the wide receiver 56. But let me go through what is most concerning when talking about Ladd McConkey. It's the fact that he's played in over 90% of the offensive snaps now in back-to-back games. He has run the 3rd most routes out of all wide receivers in the NFL and the 2nd most slot snaps. That is absolutely crazy usage. The Chargers are also averaging the 3rd most passing plays per game. We have a highly used wide receiver in a pass-heavy offense, and he just had 1 catch for 11 yards in week 4. He hasn't surpassed 50 yards receiving now in 3 straight weeks, and all these games have been pretty close contests. Herbert is just locked on to Keenan Allen and Quentin Johnston. But now, the sudden involvement of tight end Oronde Gadsden has only hurt Ladd McConkey more. It's hard to get much for Ladd McConkey as of right now, but he is a solid sell and not someone I'm buying low on in week 5. Now after him, we go to Marvin Harrison Jr. of the Arizona Cardinals, and he was drafted as the wide receiver 16, and he's currently the wide receiver 26. He had a solid week 4, but people are frustrated with the drops and the lack of weekly volume. He's coming off his first game with double-digit targets on the season, and it really looked like on tape that they were trying to force feed Marv the football to try to boost his confidence. The big touchdown late in that game was a huge sigh of relief for him. So, can we trust this going forward? Well, Arizona just lost another running back in Trey Benson, and Arizona has some tough upcoming games against the likes of Indianapolis, Green Bay, San Francisco, the Rams, Houston, and Atlanta. Add in a bye week on top of that, and that right there is 7 weeks that are going to be a tough road for Marvin Harrison Jr. It's not like Arizona is a team we can put a lot of trust in. So coming off a big game, I'm looking to sell Marvin Harrison Jr. Now after him is Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons, and he was drafted as the wide receiver 9. He's currently the wide receiver 23. Now he's coming off his best game of the season, but a lot of people have totally forgotten about and dismissed the fact that he suffered a shoulder injury earlier in the year in which he played through. But what I want to point out is what I believe is most important. In the 2 games in which Drake London has been considered quote-unquote fully healthy, he has had 10 plus targets in each of those games. That was last week and in week 1. And now we have a week coming up where the Falcons are on a bye, and once again, Drake London can't help his fantasy owner. But given the fact that he is now fully healthy, he has a huge target share, and you can get him at a slightly cheaper price. I will buy Drake London in week 5. After him, it's the rookie, Teteroa McMillan of the Carolina Panthers. He was drafted as the wide receiver 25. He's currently the wide receiver 31, but I am seeing everywhere that people are just giving up on the rookie. But he's had at least 8 targets in every game. He's averaging a huge 15.4 yards per reception. He's 6th among all wide receivers in targets, and with Carolina trailing in most weeks, it's really led to them having to throw the ball a ton. They have the 6th most pass attempts per game among all NFL teams. But on top of all that, he's been playing through a minor calf injury. His next 2 games are against Miami and Dallas though, so I would not be surprised if his value only increases over the next couple weeks. I'm not scared of the rookie, and if you can get him before he has some big games here in the next 2 weeks, I will buy Teteroa McMillan. Now after him is DJ Moore of the Chicago Bears. He was drafted as the wide receiver 22. He's currently the wide receiver 40. He only has one game over 10 fantasy points on the season, and he hasn't had more than 50 yards in a game since week 1. He has yet to have over 6 targets in a game, and as of right now, Olamide Zaccheaus actually has more targets than DJ Moore does. Roma Dunze has taken over the wide receiver 1 role in Chicago, and with all the other weapons there in this offense, there isn't a clear path to more targets for DJ Moore. He's on path for career lows in almost every metric, and the Bears have won back-to-back games, which means they don't really want to switch a whole lot up. Now, in a game in which Moore should have excelled against Dallas, he only had 21 yards. It's not going to get much easier than that. Going to be hard to get anything for him, but if possible, I'm selling DJ Moore. Now, after DJ Moore, we got Brian Thomas Jr. of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and I screamed from the rooftops all offseason to avoid BTJ. But for those of you who didn't listen, what should you do now? He was drafted as the wide receiver 8, and he's currently the wide receiver 44. He's averaging 7.5 fantasy points per game and doesn't even have a game this season with at least 60 yards receiving. But I keep hearing excuses saying, yeah, but he's getting a ton of targets. Cool. He has 32 targets on the year, but only 22 of them have been deemed catchable. And on top of that, he has 5 drops, which is the highest among all NFL wide receivers. Even with Dyami Brown injured and Travis Hunter struggling, we still aren't seeing BTJ succeed with tough upcoming matchups against the likes of Seattle, the Rams, Houston, the Chargers, and a first-round fantasy playoff game against Patrick Surtain. I am not buying BTJ. I am selling him if I can. Now, another big name guy is A.J. Brown of the Philadelphia Eagles, and if I was screaming from the rooftops on BTJ, I must have been on top of damn Everest when it comes to A.J. Brown, because this has been a multiple year thing for me. We showed this offseason how over the last few seasons of A.J. Brown's career, he seems to accrue right around 40% of his season-long scoring in just 4 games a year. Basically, 1 game a month on average. Well, we are a month into the season, and how many good games does A.J. Brown have? Yep, just 1. Volume isn't the issue. He's had 8+ targets in 3 straight games. The big problem is everything is short. In 3 of the games this year, he has averaged under 9 yards per reception, and we also know that Philly just doesn't throw the ball very much. They average the second fewest pass attempts per game out of all NFL teams. What we're seeing here is nothing new. I am selling A.J. Brown and not buying low. Now, after him is Deebo Samuel of the Washington Commanders, and he was drafted as the wide receiver 38, currently the wide receiver 10 overall. We loved him this offseason. The only game this year that he didn't highly produce was week 3, when they were blowing out the Las Vegas Raiders, and they really didn't have to throw the ball very much. We also know that Terry McLaurin's availability is up in the air, and who knows for how long. Jaden Daniels, he's back, and we're seeing Deebo used all over the place, including 114 snaps out of the slot. We talked this offseason at length about how the Cliff Kingsbury offense is a very fitting style to Deebo Samuel, and it is fitting very, very well. We're seeing it on the field almost weekly. This isn't a fluke the first month of the season, and if you can get him, I will buy Deebo Samuel everywhere I can right now. Now, what about Kenneth Walker of the Seattle Seahawks? In 1 week into the season, his bandwagon had a mass exodus. Now he's the running back 15 overall after being drafted as the running back 17. But it's like a lot of people still don't want to believe in him. Now, yes, Zach Charbonnet is a thing, and that sucks. But Kenneth Walker has had 17+ touches in back-to-back games, 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks, already has 5 runs of at least 15 yards or more. He's evaded 25 tackles in 4 games this season and plays in an offense that's running the ball almost 30 times a game. With so many underperforming studs and with so many injuries right now, we shouldn't be in a hurry to part ways with a guy that has scored at at least 11.5 fantasy points in 75% of the games this season. If someone out there is kind of iffy about Kenneth Walker, I will buy him here in week 5. Now after him is DK Metcalf of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's been a big play guy for years, and thankfully he's getting some big plays this year, because if he wasn't, he'd be banned into oblivion like AJ Brown. Now DK was drafted as the wide receiver 20. He's currently the wide receiver 15, and he has touchdowns in 3 straight games, but the volume just hasn't been as high as maybe a lot of people thought it would be coming into the season. It's literally the same situation that we've seen in Pittsburgh for years with George Pickens. Now Metcalf, he's averaging right around 5 targets a game, but in 2 of the games this season, he didn't even reach 35 yards receiving. This is what you would call the Arthur Smith effect. The good news is that 82% of his targets have been catchable, and now he's on a bye week, and if the owner is tired of the boomer bust style play, I will buy DK Metcalf. How about a surprise running back in Javonte Williams of the Dallas Cowboys? Probably one of the biggest surprises of 2025 so far. Now Williams was drafted as the RB42 and currently sits as the RB6 on the season. He's scored 17 plus fantasy points in 3 of the 4 games this year and looks more explosive now than he has at any point in his career. He's averaging career highs in almost every single metric and is averaging right around 20 touches a game. He's involved in the passing game. He's top 10 among all NFL running backs in red zone touches, targets, rushing yards, receptions, touchdowns, fantasy points per game, routes run, evaded tackles, and yards created per touch. I see a lot of questions about selling high on Javonte Williams, and to that, I say absolutely no way. There is nothing out there showing that this can't continue and that he won't be a high-tier fantasy asset remainder of the season. If anything, I'm holding and buying Javonte Williams. Now after him is Breece Hall of the New York Jets, and expectations were low for Breece coming into the season, especially with all the changes in New York. He was drafted as the RB16. He's currently the RB25, but we just saw a week 4 Braylon Allen injury, and that could really open up things for Breece Hall. He has now seen 6 targets in back-to-back games, and Justin Fields has shown that he will settle for the short dump-offs more times than not. Hall's yards per carry right now are the highest they have been since his rookie year. He's on pace for almost 1,300 total yards and over 50 receptions. The biggest concern here is touchdowns. Justin Fields is taking all the rushing touchdowns on the ground. But with the slower start here to the season, owners aren't overly attached to Breece Hall right now. With the Allen injury and upcoming games against Dallas, Carolina, and Cincinnati, now is the perfect time to buy Breece Hall. Now lastly, what about Quentin Johnston of the Los Angeles Chargers? He may be an even bigger surprise than Javonte Williams. Johnston was drafted as the wide receiver 79, and he's the current wide receiver 4. He's seen at least 7 targets a game in every game this season. He has a catch of at least 33 yards in all 4 games. He's got 4 touchdowns through 4 weeks. Is it possible that the former first-round wide receiver has finally figured it out? He has been a great fantasy wide receiver the first 4 weeks of the season, but this is one of those instances where I may break one of my rules in trading away a consistent performer. We just had another injury on the offensive line in LA with Joe Alt, and that could lead to less time in the pocket for Justin Herbert. But more importantly, you either drafted Quentin Johnston super late or you picked him up off of waivers, which means you may not be overly reliant on him. If you have a need elsewhere on your team and Quentin Johnston is just a luxury at this point, this is the perfect time to sell high on Quentin Johnston. But let me reiterate something. This is if you don't need him in your starting lineup weekly. If you are solid at the wide receiver position, selling high on Quentin Johnston for another position of need just makes too much sense. So there you have 18 big names that a lot of people were wondering, should I sell high or should I buy low? Now, obviously, there's a ton of players we could have discussed in the show today. If you have questions on other players, leave them down below in the comment section. I'm going to do my best to get to as many comments as I possibly can on this video. Now, if you haven't already, do me a favor, hit the like button and consider subscribing if you're not already subscribed. Because the last thing you want to do is make a stupid trade that absolutely sinks your season.